Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into something really interesting, the secret structure behind political arguments and a really clever trick that's used to shut them down completely.
So, let's start with a big question, kind of a mystery really. Have you ever wondered why some arguments just change history? I mean, they topple governments, win rights, spark revolutions. What gives them that incredible power? And why other arguments, which seem just as logical, just fizzle out?
All right, let's look at a couple of really powerful examples from our source material. On one side, you've got arguments for capitalism. A lot of times they'll frame something like economic inequality as, well, not really a problem we can solve, but more of a sad, unavoidable part of life. Then, on the other side, you've got the fight for women's suffrage. That argument framed the lack of a vote as a massive injustice that absolutely had to change, right now. See how different those are? They're working in totally opposite directions.
So, to really get why they're so different, we need to kind of look behind the scenes. We've got to peek behind the walls of our society and check out the invisible ideas that hold the whole thing up.
And our source brings up this fantastic analogy from the philosopher Mary Midgley. She said political philosophy, all those big ideas about justice and rights and what's fair, it's just like the plumbing in your house. Think about it. It's this super complex system, totally essential, you use it every single day, but you never ever think about it. That is, until something goes horribly wrong.
And that's so true, right? Most of the time, our shared beliefs, why we do things like pay taxes or obey certain laws, they're just humming along in the background, inside the walls. But then a crisis hits. Maybe it's a huge debate, a new law, a big protest movement, and bam, the pipes burst. All of a sudden, this stuff we never talked about is out in the open, and we're forced to argue about the very foundations we just assumed were solid.
Okay, so when that happens, when those foundations get challenged, the arguments that pop up tend to go one of two ways.
And the source gives these two types great names: mobilizing and diffusing arguments. A mobilizing argument is like a fire alarm. It screams, hey, this is a serious flaw, we need to do something about this now. It's a call to action. A diffusing argument, though, it's the exact opposite. It says, whoa, calm down, it's not a flaw, it's just an unavoidable frustration. It basically tells you that this problem is just a sad part of life you have to accept.
And here's a perfect example of a diffusing argument at work. The source points to how some people defend economic inequality. They don't necessarily deny that poverty is tough. Instead, they reframe it. They say, look, it's not some injustice that we have to fix. No, it's one of those endemic, albeit sad, features of human life with which we must learn to live. See? It's presented as just the price we pay for this system.
Okay, but here's the thing. There's a particular, super effective way to diffuse one of those mobilizing arguments, to stop it dead in its tracks before it even gets going. It's an argument killer.
And you've definitely heard it before. Someone lays out this really powerful case about why something is wrong or unjust, and the comeback is, well, that's just your subjective opinion, not an objective fact. Boom, conversation over. The whole idea is to suggest that any claim about what's right or wrong is just a feeling, with no real logic behind it.
Right, so this view basically says that arguing about justice is like arguing about ice cream flavors. You like chocolate, I like vanilla. Who's right? Nobody. It's just a personal taste, a non-rational feeling. And if that's true, if saying that's unjust is the same as saying I prefer this flavor, then rational debate is impossible, right? There's no way to prove anything.
Okay, but this is where things get really interesting, because the source material takes this whole idea, this neat, clean line between objective facts and subjective opinions, and just tears it apart.
So, first problem, the words subjective and objective are a total mess. They're not as clear as we think. Subjective could mean it's just a feeling, or it could mean it's biased, or maybe just that it's hard to prove. They're all different things. Same with objective. The point is, these words are actually super blurry and imprecise.
Let me ask you something. How hard is it to prove these things? Friendship is good, pain is bad, starvation is an evil to be avoided. Experiencing great beauty enhances life. I mean, are these really that controversial? Most of us would say, yeah, of course. They feel pretty solid, right?
Okay, now look at these questions. What caused the French Revolution? How does consciousness work? Why did the dinosaurs go extinct? These are supposed to be objective, factual questions, but scientists and historians have been fighting about them for ages. So this whole idea that facts are easy to prove and values are hard to prove, it just falls apart when you really look at it.
And here's the real kicker. All rational thinking, whether it's science or politics, is about the same thing. It's a search for good reasons to believe something. That's it. You're looking for evidence, for logic, for support for your conclusion. It doesn't matter if you're talking about atoms or about justice, you're trying to build the best case you can.
And you know what? That means even science is full of values. I mean, think about the quote here. When a claim is warranted, it's worthy to be believed. That's a value judgment. We're saying being reasonable is good and being a fool is bad. Refusing to accept a good argument, well, that gets you criticized.
So this leads to the big reveal. If this whole fact versus opinion thing is so shaky, why do we hear it all the time? Well, it's because when someone dismisses an argument as just subjective, they're not making some deep philosophical point.
No, it's a political move. It's a tactic. It's a way to shut down the conversation and get a specific result. This isn't about finding the truth. It's about power.
And that's its real purpose. It's what the source calls the subjectivity play. It's a diffusing strategy, plain and simple. When you take a mobilizing critique, a call for change, a demand for justice, and you label it just an opinion, you suck all the air out of it. You're saying it's not based on reason, it's just feelings, it's just noise.
And who does that benefit? Well, it overwhelmingly protects the status quo. Think about it. A critic calling for change is often just one voice. But the established system, it already has power, money, and influence. By saying, hey, your argument for change and our argument for keeping things the same are both just opinions, the status quo wins. Why? Because inaction is easier. The mobilizing call for change just becomes background noise the power can easily ignore.
So here's what I want you to take away from this. The next time you're in a debate or you're watching one online and you hear someone dismiss a point as just their subjective opinion, listen closely. Ask yourself, who is trying to mobilize here and who is trying to diffuse? Because you're probably not seeing a clash of philosophies, you're seeing a power play in action. And sometimes, the quietest way to win an argument is to convince everyone there's no argument to be had at all.